It looks like we're live. Hello, everybody. I am Jackie Zimmerman. I will be your moderator for this conversation this evening. We are talking tonight about IBD and intimacy and relationships and all that super fun, but also kind of scary stuff to talk about. I want to give a shout to our host, Galley Health. They have a really amazing app that supports people who live with IBD. You should definitely check it out. You can download it and then talk to Galley like she's your BFF, which is like what we're going to do in this conversation tonight, talking like we're BFFs and we totally know each other. Which brings me to my next point, which is I have not actually met any of you, which I've been in this IBD game for like a really long time, and that I've been creeping on all of you on the internet so far. I haven't talked to you except Meredith, but like I know you, but I don't know you. So that said, I have a J pouch. I've had a J pouch for 10 years now, and I'm doing awesome. But let's get to know you a little bit more. So I'm going to call on you just so we get through introductions, and then we're going to like dive in. So Meredith, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm the lead patient advocate at Galley Health. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I have had ulcerative colitis since 2011. It came on super suddenly out of nowhere. I had toxic megacolon. A year and a half later, I had a total procticolectomy. So now I live with a J pouch. I have lots of fun spoony problems like POTS and chronic pain and all that good stuff. But my advocacy heart will always be with IBD. I live in Rockville, Maryland with my husband. So I am married and I have 2 dogs. And my handle online is the Bowel Battling Badass. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook there.
Can you tell Meredith has done this before? She's like, check, check, check. Here's all the
I like to be prepared.
Justin?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so my name is Justin. I've had my ileostomy for 11 years, I think. I just stopped counting, but it's been a while. My main impact that I want to leave on the world is that people who have to have an ostomy feel like they're sexy and don't feel like they're broken. So I've done certain things in the past where like I've been a stripper, done like some topless waitering and whatnot, and really defeated the stigma of like having an ostomy being ugly. So yeah, that's the impact I want to leave is 1 million people have that new view, and I'm at 340,000 at the moment. So yeah, pretty
no big deal. Just 340,000. I feel like we're like on old school AOL right now where I'm asking you for like ASL, like, you know, like what's your deal? Like, are you in a relationship or?
Oh yeah. So I'm like, I'm dating around. So I live a different lifestyle where I believe in like just loving lots of people. So I'm just figuring that out for myself. It's very different. Not only dating with an ostomy, but also dating in like an open relationship where you're loving lots of people. And so it's really cool to explore that.
Fun. Krista, can you tell us about you?
Yeah, I'm Krista. I live in Alberta, Canada. I have Crohn's disease. I was diagnosed in 2001. So I've kind of lived my whole life with Crohn's disease. I was only 9 when I was diagnosed. I had my ostomy surgery in April 2008, 4 months before my wedding day, with my husband, Jay. So, yeah.
Do you feel like, were you ready for that before your wedding? Or were you like, I need to do this so I can get married? Or was it a problem?
No, it was actually my choice. It was something I had pushed before. I said, I was over being sick, and I said, let's just get this done before so I can feel better and, you know, start living my life. So then they kind of listened and they're like, oh, that's a good idea. So we went forward with it.
That's awesome. Okay, last but certainly not least, Ishmael, what about you?
My name is Ishmael, and I also live in Alberta, Canada. And I've had ulcerative colitis now for 5 years, well, diagnosed for 5 years. And yeah, I'm still pretty fresh to the scene with the IBD community, but My main focus is just trying to make people break the stigma and feel comfortable and kind of give out those resources that didn't exist when I was first diagnosed. For the first few years, I didn't really know there was this online community that was able to help people. So anything I can do and contribute, I'm more than happy to.
What's your relationship situation?
Right, sorry. I am in a same-sex relationship and we've been together for 4 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's pretend like we've been besties for a long time and talk about intimacy and sex and all those other things that people don't talk about that often. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to have this conversation today, because we have this disease or IBD set of diseases that people don't talk about. And then you have this other thing, which is like intimacy, where people really don't talk about that either. And when you put them together, there's a whole lot of room for silence and stuff to go wrong or stuff to be confusing or embarrassing. And let's not do that, right? Like, let's do the breaking the stigma thing, which is what we are all really passionate about. And let's talk about it. And one of the things, like, this is why I think it's important to talk about it, is because there's so much potential for shame when you combine those two things together, especially if you're dating or in a new relationship. Like, there's just the shame spiral waiting to happen. And so that's why I think these conversations are really important. Why do you guys think it's important to talk about this? Like, talking about intimacy in terms of the IBD community, like, where's your passion lie? Like, why is this important to you?
I think, like, when it comes to intimacy, there's a lot of, especially in the IBD community or any other, like, yeah, say IBD community, it's very, like, there's a lot of stigma and there's a lot of, like, false things that we think to ourselves. So a lot of, like, fears, a lot of, like, perceptions on how people will see us, right? And we make this story. And I remember when I first had my ostomy, when I had my ostomy, I was like, oh my gosh, no one's going to want to have sex with me. I'm going to die a virgin. Like, this is the worst thing in the world. I'm 21 or 20, like, you know. So it's this whole, like, this is like image that we paint in our mind. And I think it's normal as a human being, especially when like, for me, my confidence was quite low. Like, I had no friends. I was just really insecure. I didn't know how to talk to women at all. And then I had been locked with this bag, right? And so, like, I remember reading a book, like, I was reading a book, I was, like, studying, like, I got some mentors from the book, and so they taught me difference of mindset, and they taught me about how my mind was really controlled my reality. So whatever I thought was true would be true. And then also, like, just going through all of that, working on my self-confidence, I had to sculpt who I am today, right? To be more outgoing, loving, accepting of myself and all that. But like, the thing that makes me really passionate about it is because I was there before, where I was super shy of my bag. I was super shy of everything about myself, and my self-confidence was low. I was afraid of the smell and all that. And I thought women would think I was ugly, and it wasn't the case. And I actually had to work on myself to do that. There was no one out there who said, hey, it's sexy to have a bag. There was no one out there telling me what to think and what to say. So I actually had to go out and try for myself. And I remember, like, back then I was so scared. I actually was really afraid of being intimate with a woman. So I actually hired an escort to help me. And so this escort helped me, like, because I was trembling. I couldn't actually take her clothes off, you know. So she really helped me relax and do that. And then when I took off my clothes, I remember my heart was pounding, because I was like, oh my gosh, is she going to think I'm ugly? What's she going to say? Is she going to run out of the room? And then when I took it off, she's like, oh, are you, like, first thing, are you okay? Is it all right? And there was all this love, empathy, and compassion. And I was like, wow, mind blowing. Like, this is one of the most beautiful women I've seen in the world. Yes, she's a paid escort, but I really defeated that limiting belief. So for me, it was like a really healing journey just to change the stigma. It's like all this stuff that I was thinking in my mind is not true. And so now when I'm, like, dating and things like that, it's like, wow, it's actually the sexiest thing about me. The sexiest thing is that I have an ostomy and I have my Crohn's. It's like the reason why women are so attracted to me, because I'm inspiring. They find scars sexy. They're like, wow, like, you know, that's a real turn on. Like, we're so blessed to be in an age where like the biggest turn on is not physique. For men, maybe it kind of is physique, but like it's not. But majority, like 90%, is mentally how you turn someone on. How do you make them feel? Are you an inspiring person to be around? Or are you like, you know, so that's the advantage that we have today. And it's, it's a real blessing to be in that, you know, situation.
There's so much that I want to comment on right there, but one of the main things is, so I've been in the IBD space for 10 years now. I have connected to like thousands of people in all these stories and started an organization for women with IBD. And the number one thing that I want to like hit home for people who live with ostomies is I have never met a person so far that has had an ostomy and went on a date with somebody or had sex with somebody and had that person go, ew, gross, get away. Nobody cares. Like when you're in it and you're ready to get down and do the thing, nobody's really noticing your bag. And that was something that I wish that I had known when I had an ostomy. I was in a relationship at the time, but it didn't matter, right? It was a massive change to my body. It was all new and different and scary, and I had a lot of the same emotions that you did at the time. Like a lifetime of bad self-esteem combined with body image and being a woman in general. But no one cared. And it definitely did not hinder anything. And I feel like that's something people need to hear over and over and over again when you're facing ostomy surgery or you're new to being an ostomate. Like, it doesn't matter to most people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this other thing on top of that is to reframe the belief, right? You have the one belief like, oh, it's not sexy to have it. Well, you got to create another belief because, you know, if there's more validity behind this, like, you know, seeing as unsexy. So when you create the new belief of it is sexy and people do find it attractive, you got to just find as much information and stories and examples, like you said, you know, for you to believe that story more and see that story more. And so whatever it is like for you in the future, or whatever it is calls you to do that, it's a really important thing to go and explore it. Ask for, like, a good thing to do, like that I worked out, was asking my female friends, like, would you still have sex? Would you have sex with me if I had my ostomy? And a lot of them said yes. And so the more yeses you get for that belief, the more easy it is for you to, you know, do it. So is it scary? Is it like jumping off a cliff when you finally go to the point where you're about to be intimate with someone? Yes, but then it's much more easier because you have more references and examples of people saying it's fine.
It's new neural pathways. So you can create new neural pathways in your brain by thinking certain thoughts and taking in the same kinds of information over and over again. That's what leads us to bad self-esteem. And so you can create new ones that take you to good self-esteem. What do the rest of you guys think? Like, why is intimacy and IBD so important to you?
I think it's important for us to discuss it in this community for, a number of reasons. First of all, like Justin was saying, we're all human. We deserve connection and intimacy like anyone else. But I think that like those limiting beliefs, a lot of times we tell ourselves we're a burden, or we feel that way if we don't really talk it out with our partners. But like, we deserve love. We deserve to be respected and like to feel good about ourselves. So it's helpful when others in the IBD community say like, yeah, I felt like a burden, but you know what? You are not a burden. And if we share how we navigate like these challenges together, then we can say, okay, there's hope. So it can help us both like personally figure out what we need in our lives, but also clinically, it helps us advocate for ourselves with our doctors, because IBD is so much more than just targeting the guts. There are extraintestinal manifestations. Women can have like pelvic pain, rectovaginal fistulas, men can have, decreased sexual function, things like that, medication interactions in terms of like fertility and sex drive. You can have like postoperative abdominal scarring from the IBD surgeries that can impact, your reproductive organs, and overall just like not make you feel comfy a lot of the time, which is what I experience all the time. So you need to know that those things are potential issues that could come up in your life, because like what you don't know, you don't know. So if you start to see something or feel something, or after a procedure or surgery, you have this new symptom or challenge to deal with, we need to know how to be able to talk about it and vocalize it and trying to figure out what we can do about it with our provider team.
Has anybody had like a really productive conversation about intimacy or sex with their GI? Because I don't think I have. I mean, when I was going in for my surgeries, they were really hammering home that it could affect like my ability to get pregnant. And I was like, I don't want kids, buddy. Like, next, moving on. And they kept like hammering it home. And I was like, I really don't care. Can we please talk about something else? Nothing else was ever talked about. Like, all the other potential for issues and things that I have seen in friends of mine now, like, I had no idea at all what I was getting into. And I feel like they really did me dirty on that one. And I don't know anybody who's had like a really good, solid, productive conversation with a GI.
Well, first off, I find that with any conversation with a GI, it's always so limited to like such a small period of time. Like, every doctor's appointment is like 10 to 15 minutes, and you have so many other things that you have to talk about. And I have found that usually with most GIs, and in my 5 years, I've dealt with 3 because mine had taken a few leaves. And throughout that time, I realized that there was a pattern with all of them. They kind of just give you the bare bones of like what to expect, and they won't really delve into like that emotional side of it or the psychological side of it. So you're kind of just limited to talking about the physical aspect of it and what the major life changes would be. Like, for you, they kept hammering in the fact that you won't be able to have kids, even though you were letting them know that that wasn't important to you. But to them, that's like the medical side of it that they will only touch on, because they're like, we need to let her know this. You know, it's like when you watch an infomercial for medication and they kind of just list off all of the potential side effects, and that's kind of where it ends. You know, it's like really cut and dry. So I've never been able to I've never had the opportunity to have a really productive conversation about intimacy with my GI, but I've kind of made peace with the fact that I probably won't ever get the time to do that. So it's going to be something that I have to explore on my own.
And it feels like, why would I pay a copay to have this conversation, right? If you were like, make an appointment just for this one thing, I'm probably not going to pay you $50 to talk about like why I'm uncomfortable having sex, right? That's just probably not going to do that. I'm going to call somebody. I'm going to call you guys, not my GI.
Yeah. Actually, the only time I've actually had a decent conversation was in our ostomy support group. We have guest speakers, and they had like a pelvic floor, and she really just dove into everything and how surgeries and could impact intercourse, right? If it's painful and all of these different things. And it wasn't anything that my GI had talked to me about. My GI has talked about, having kids and all of that, but that was it, just the bare minimum.
And have you talked to your GI? I mean, this goes for anybody. Have you talked to your GI about like having kids, or is anybody other than me who's a staunch like no kids, no thank you, never in a million years or longer? Does anybody like want to do that? Has that been a factor in any of your, surgery, medication, anything you're doing?
For sure. For me, when I had my surgery, they decided to just do a temporary ostomy because the first question was, do you want to have kids? I said, and that's something I've always wanted. So we went forward with just a temporary and kind of just leave it like that until that day comes. But yeah, so I don't other than that, yeah, that's it.
I feel like they talk to women a lot more. I mean, obviously, I would say like the uterus and your colon and small intestine, they kind of share the same real estate. So like one affects the other pretty regularly. With guys, I mean, I knew a lot of friends of mine, like post-surgery, who had issues like sustaining erections and things like that. But like, I don't know, did either of your doctors actually talk to you about how this affects you at all?
No.
Nope.
Not at all.
No.
Cool.
I have the same experience as Krista. that like I've only learned about these things from my pelvic floor physical therapist, and that's because I like sought out that care because I realized on my own that like I must have a lot of scar tissue and I need a lot more like hands-on physical therapy. And the things that they've been able to tell me about my body and how my IBD and my colectomy and my J pouch surgeries have affected my body, it just makes me feel so much more validated too. It's like, oh, it's not just me. I'm not like messed up. It's all these things have happened to my body. My body's endured this trauma over 10 years. Then they went in and removed all my large intestine and my rectum. So things aren't going to be the same down there, and that affects everything. So it's given me a lot of empowerment to know like what's going on, first of all, and then also how I can try and improve those symptoms and things that are, you know, barriers to intimacy and things like that. But yeah, there's just, like Ishmael said, there's never enough time to discuss with a GI, even like the mental health aspect of it too. But when you're lying there for an hour with a physical therapist, those are like they're the only people who know everything about me, and like everything I want to say, they're like double serve as my like therapist.
Yes, physical therapy is one of, I'm like, why doesn't everybody go to physical therapy after surgery, right? There's so much that you should be part of the healing plan. But I want to touch on, you mentioned mental health like for a little blurb, and I know that like Justin talked a little bit about like how he felt before his surgeries, and I feel like, again, intimacy is one of those things where like you're real confident, IBD aside, in terms of talking to a love interest or just about your body in general. Do you feel like the combo, like having IBD and maybe its effects on mental health has impacted your ability to be intimate in any way? And by intimacy, I don't mean sex, right? I'm talking all the kinds of intimacy. And maybe this is a time to talk about like the types of intimacy that matter most to you, you know, because I know a lot of people, I'm talking a lot, but I know a lot of my friends in the IBD world, like sex is an issue for them and their bodies and how they feel. So like sometimes we seek out intimacy in a lot of different ways.
I find that for me, like the idea of intimacy, what's important has changed a little bit from pre-diagnosis to post-diagnosis. Just like physical touch means a lot more to me than it did before, in the sense of like just like the, you know, like if I'm in pain, knowing that like my partner is going to be there to like tend to that pain is like means a lot more. Whereas like before, you know, like if I got hurt or something before I was diagnosed with something, I'd be like, oh no, I'll be fine, and like I didn't want that kind of attention, you know. So I find that for me, that I've noticed that change in like the need for physical touch and the difference of what kind of physical touch I require now versus before.
Would you be willing to share the differences?
I think that I feel like pre-diagnosis, I was obviously like a little bit more, I think, I don't know how to put this, I think I was more open to, it's like sex was just sex before, you know, and now there's a little bit more to it for me, whereas like now it means a lot more to feel like if I'm not feeling well to like be held or touched, or you know, like to apply pressure where it may hurt or anything like that. And whereas before there wasn't as much to the idea of sex as before, it was just like, this is sex and it's done. You know.
Yeah, I find like for me, there's a newer level of like vulnerability, right? Like I'm more willing to say, to ask for what I need, and sometimes like it's just a cuddle, or you know, like something that's intimate but not in like the traditional terms of intimacy in some way. Yes. Right? Like it's just sometimes, I don't know, for me, I agree, like there was maybe too, like I'm getting old now, so like, you know, I want more like intimacy on like an emotional level than maybe a physical level for a lot of the time. And a lot of that is based on how I'm feeling at the time, right? I'm so tired all the time, right? It's really hard to like turn it up when I go to bed at 9:30 every night. So, I mean, I don't know, like, what do you guys think about like different types of intimacy, right? Or do you agree with like Ishmael? Like, is it sort of like, it's different now? Is it different because of IBD or your age or like where your relationship status? Rapid fire questions, go.
Well, I feel like intimacy means, like, for me at its base, like being able to be totally open and, like you said, vulnerable with another person about your own vulnerabilities and the ability to actually like grow closer together as you navigate those things together. And that emotional intimacy is most important, and that you really need that in order to have like truly fulfilling physical intimacy. And then when you have a chronic illness like IBD, your relationship with your body and just your own mental space just changes and is super complicated already. And you're not in control of sometimes your mind and body and how they're feeling. So like then opening up yourself and all those insecurities and all those vulnerabilities that you have to another person can be a lot. And it takes a lot of patience and respectful, honest and direct conversation to be able to work through how to make each person feel heard, loved, and respected. I know that like before I got sick when I was 20, and my now husband and I like literally met 2 weeks before I got sick and went into the hospital for months at a time. So we did not at all have a traditional kind of relationship, like beginning to a relationship. It was in college. So, which is like, hookup culture. But I was in the hospital, so that's not exactly hookup appropriate. And my body, had wasted away. So we had to find a new way to be intimate. And that's really like, I think getting to know each other and both of our vulnerabilities and what we are looking for in a relationship was super important before we could even begin to get to like the physical intimacy stuff. And now the thing that I really prize in my relationship is the emotional level of intimacy that I can be deep and talk about like, hey, I feel like a freaking whale today, or like, I'm sorry, my urgency is too much. I can't get out of bed. I can't be touched. So there's being able to have those deep, straightforward, and honest conversations is just key to being able to establish some level of intimacy with your partner or partners.
I feel like another level of that too, like similarly with intimacy, is like dealing with a partner who has a much higher sex drive than you do, whether that be to medication or fatigue, or do any of you guys deal with that? Or do you have any like tips maybe if you've had to deal with that?
Yeah, I've been on, I think to do with when it comes to that, like mental intimacy is the most powerful, so if you're with someone who's got a higher sex drive, like, and you're not feeling it, when you can go there, but mentally with them, but if you're not physically into it, that makes a big difference, because sex is pretty much 90% mental and 10% physical. I sometimes say it's 99% mental and 1% physical, right? So I think that's a really important part, is like, it's not all about just like penetration. It's not all about, doing that. It's like, sometimes it could be like oral, sometimes it could be more like touch and things like that. So the more you can figure out how to mentally turn your partner on, the more powerful it is. And it's a good tool if you're feeling very fatigued, right? Because you may not feel like doing it. Maybe you just need to have a little nap and go, hey, look, give me a nap and I'll be ready to go. And then you can do the mental foreplay and things like that. And I think that's a lot more powerful. I feel like that's more rewarding. And I feel like there's more pleasure that's built up from having that mental stimulation. And really like that, like Meredith said, like that emotional connection where you just like want to ravish each other, And so it's really like, we remove all of it. It's just like two people and they're wanting to ravish each other coming together, So, but also when you're single, it's a different story, right? Because number one, you're like, oh, what do I do? Like, I'm afraid. How do I break this to the person? And so, yes, you may feel like you're behind the 8 ball when it comes to physically how you look like when you're in front of that person. But also the main thing is, if you can turn your partner on, turn that person on to the point where they really want you, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you have a bag or you don't have a bag. What really matters is you can be the best lover that they've had, only because like they've, mentally turned them on. Like, for example, like a lot of men may have issues being intimate with a woman and say, oh, she may not like me. But we've also got to consider the fact that there's also women who get with women and they don't have a penis, right? And so how do they get their partners off to the point where they feel really good? Is through mental through foreplay, through, you know, going down on them and all that stuff. So I would say not to limit yourself and go, oh, just looking at it like that, but also looking at sex as not just penetration, but also as a way of mentally stimulating someone, you know. And so sometimes I've had more stimulating and more arousing conversations of when I've been in the car with someone and just really having that like teasing foreplay kind of talk, right? And we haven't even touched each other, and you can just feel that tension building and that excitement building, as opposed to, you know, when say some people I've been intimate with, I'm like, oh, that's like blah, you know.
Well, it's a good point about communication too. So whether it's verbal communication or even like the way like your bodies communicate, communication with your partner, whether it be a long-term partner or like a this moment right now partner, matters. You know, I think especially matters more for people with any kind of health condition, but specifically with IBD, like even if you don't want to disclose you have IBD with your partner, like whatever, choose your own adventure, but communicating your needs, your wants, and maybe limitations you have, I think it's so important and is a game changer in most scenarios, right? I mean, communication is important in general, but I feel like when it comes to specifically like your body and the intimacy involved, like with your body, like you have to be able to express thoughts, feelings, wants, needs.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Like for the first. Sorry, go ahead, Ishmael.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think what Justin was saying, like he hit the nail on the head with that too, is that for like, obviously a lot of us, when we are dealing with like chronic pain and stuff, it can be hard to get into that like 1% of the physical act. So that 99% of that like emotional side of it, and being able to have those open conversations that lead to like a little bit more of a teasing type of conversation can mean a lot more to us, especially because we may not be feeling well enough to go that full 100 at that point, but we still want to be able to feel everything leading up to that. And so I think exactly what he was saying, I think that's truly like hitting the nail on the head for that aspect of it.
There, for the ladies, there was a book that I read a few months ago called Come As You Are, and it is like a top-notch recommend to everyone, even men, if you have a female partner. It is very, very good about the mental connection to women specifically having sex. There's probably some good information in there in general. I would say even for men with IBD, because it's all about like how when your mind is jumbled and distracted and there's anxiety and all the things, like how having sex is just really difficult and can feel not fun or like a chore or all those like negative feelings we have. And it gives you like strategies and the science behind why that is. So it's a really, really great book to kind of like figure out like what your perfect scenario is for being mentally in it. Like Justin was saying, right? Like you have to be 99% in it mentally. And if you can't get there, it's not a fun time. So I strongly recommend that book to literally everybody.
I know, kind of touching base like off of that, before my ostomy surgery, I was always, you know, even like during intercourse, was always worrying about, am I going to have an accident? Right. So that was kind of like, right, that I couldn't get past that. So it was always like fearing or the anxiety of not even wanting to do that because I didn't want the accident to happen. But and I was so thin and was like, I couldn't gain any weight. So I guess even just having, you know, looking at myself and not seeing who I used to be, and that kind of prevented me too. But since I've had my surgery and I feel so much better and I've gained weight, I actually feel like a woman and I feel sexy. And I think even just when you're confident in yourself and your own body, then that kind of reflects. And then, you know, my husband always tells me, he's like, I don't even see your ostomy bag. It's not, you know, it's there, but it's not really what I see anymore. It's just something that's part of you.
Yeah. And this is a good time just to throw it in there to the world. I have not had an accident during sex, but I have a good friend that did. And guess what? She's still alive. She didn't die from the embarrassment. She survived. You will too if it happens to you. I had a really fun sex folly where when I had an ostomy, my bag came off and I didn't know it. Fun, right? Guess what? Still alive. Didn't die from embarrassment. So like stuff happens, right? Sex is weird, and sometimes it's like bodies are weird. So I feel like you just need to know that if that stuff happens, you'll be okay. Weirder stuff has happened, I'm sure, to people in the world. So like you'll survive, I promise.
Yeah. Also on that thing, I wanted to mention is like, if you like, I've had leaks while I've been having sex with someone, and you know, everyone's been really compassionate and nice and going, oh, that's okay, that's all good, and really like that. And the thing is, I've never had someone have an adverse reaction. Oh, that's disgusting, right? But if I do, I got to consider if it happens to me in the future. I'd be like, I don't want to be with that person. I don't want to be with a person who's not considerate, not kind-hearted, not someone that's not loving, you know. So that's something that's really important, is choosing the right person, right? And then also is like loving yourself is something that's really, really important, because no matter how much someone tells us how much they love us, how much they think that we're sexy, if we can't see that that we are that, then it's very hard. It's like an uphill battle, and it can be very draining on the other person, because they are actually seeing the truth of reality, and the reality is you are amazing, you're sexy and beautiful. And when you can't see that, it's like it's just hitting heads. So it's really important to work through those things yourself, you know, and go, no, you know what, reframe those beliefs, do the inner work and do that, because it's the best gift you can give to your partner, because literally what they're doing is they're giving you a gift saying, hey, I find you super sexy, right? Here's a gift. And then you're kind of going, oh, no, I don't deserve the gift. No. And it's like, no, I'm worshiping you. Here's the gift. It's really important to be able to embrace and take on the compliment and go, you know, I've had to deal with that for myself quite a lot, you know, and I'm still learning to like now really like, you know, give it to me more, like give me more praise. And I love myself really like heaps, but it's still a journey, you know.
The concept of like loving yourself, like Oprah says, right? You have to love yourself before anybody else can. Or is that RuPaul? Or
RuPaul.
those really sassy, amazing Black women. The reason why that's super, super important is, so Brene Brown, who is another like goddess to me, she has another example similarly, and I think really relates to people with chronic illness, which is when people offer to help you and you say no, it teaches them that it's not okay to accept help, right? When they're continuing like, can I help you? And you're like, no, I got it. So that person's never going to ask you for help because they think you're not willing. You don't think help is important, so why would they ask you for help, right? Or it's a weakness to ask for help. And I think the same thing is about loving yourself, right? Like that's, Justin, if somebody's giving you love and you're like, nope, I'm not worthy of this love, it's not fun to love somebody who doesn't want to accept your love, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really solid point. I'm a big fan of that. We have a couple questions. I want to veer a little bit back to something we talked about, and this question is specifically for our dudes, and I'm going to read it word for word so I don't botch it. And it says, question for the guys: as a person of color, how do you talk about your health condition to a prospect, as it's very stigmatized in our community? Often the health condition is kept a secret. Have you seen another person of color who is open to your IBD? Have you ever been judged having this as if something is wrong with you?
Yeah, so I've been with a lot of women, like a lot. And so let's go 100 plus, right? So yeah, anyway, so what I used to have that concept of like, oh, like, you know, I'm Indian, like I grew up and everyone was like, oh, you're a curry muncher, you're not cool. Like I was the most uncool person in the world in the school, right? And I never loved being me. And so I always wanted to date white girls. I always wanted to date like, you know, different like girls who were like Asian and whatever. Like I had a crush on everyone, right? And so it was very tough for me. And a lot of it's mental, right? And I had to, like, through getting the coaching and going through all that journey, I realized like I had to rebuild my image of what sexy was. Like, I thought Indian was not sexy. And then one of my dating coach, he goes, you know what? Like, you have to see Indian as being the sexiest thing, right? Or being of color is the sexiest thing. So then I started like getting, different examples of, I'll show you what I got. I've got an example here, right? Of one person of color who's in my room, is Lenny Kravitz, So we have like this image here of
That
like
guy
of him.
exudes sex. Like everything about him is just
Yeah. So he's my role model of like, just of being like a real like sex symbol, So like having examples is a really important part of like of reframing it for yourself. And then also when it comes to like, you have to really convince yourself and see it as the sexiest thing. So when I was breaking the conversation to a woman, I remember when I was younger and saying, I've got Crohn's, I was trembling. And she goes, oh, my friend has Crohn's, or my friend has colitis. Like, it's so common. Like, when you tell someone you're dating what's Crohn's or what's colitis, majority of my, I have like 80% of the women say, hey, look, I know someone who has it. So there's a lot of compassion there already. And then also the 20% like, oh, what is that? And I just simply break it down and say, I just blah, blah, blah. Like, my stomach's sore and it's just inflammation. I have to be careful. And also the smell is really the smell can be like a tricky thing to navigate. So a couple of things I have around that is to have like, I've got oregano tablets. So oregano oil tablets. So like when I go to empty my bag, it smells like oregano and not like someone died in the bathroom, And then there's different essential oil sprays you can spray in the bathroom. But yeah, so for someone of color, like, you really got to see yourself as sexy. You got to see yourself as like hot chocolate. You got to see yourself as different. You got to see yourself as like the prize, because and you got to create this delusion in your mind of like, for me, what I say is everyone's just used to white guys. They want like something different. They want chocolate. They want spice. They're bored of vanilla. So like, you have to really like just cultivate that within you, and cultivate that having an autoimmune disease is sexy because it makes you humble. It makes you a fighter. Women really love fighters in the movies. They love the person who goes from like rock bottom and proves it to the world. Like, that's what you see in all the movies. You see every movie there's a hero that goes through that journey. They go from a rock bottom to top. So that's what you are. Like, you're not that average person. You're actually the hero. And so when you can start to see that for yourself, that's the real reality of how the truth is. Then it makes dating and things a lot more easier, and you become this magnet. People are like, oh my gosh, I really want to date you now because you've got a bag, you're of color and you're different and you're really inspiring, and you really show me how to, the full extent of life,
I love that. Be your hero. Ishmael, do you think you're a hero? Like, what do you think on this?
I feel like I'm still working on it, because I mean, like, the thing is, for me, it's only been like 5 years, and an aspect of it is to trying to understand that you have to like battle that ego every day too, because it's always trying to knock you down, right? So you have to get to that place where you feel empowered through vulnerability. So for me, that's kind of been the biggest thing that I've been working on. And I think that growing up a person of color in a city that's predominantly white, we, as Justin said, you kind of can feel like you might be like the weird person or anything like that. So it's trying to figure out where your path is, and understanding that there is power in who you are, even as a person of color, and battling those, because culturally, it's not like we've talked about, like, culturally, it's not a huge thing for us to talk about like sex when we're people of color, or especially being like Southeast Asian. Like, it's not something that we really talk about. We also don't talk about homosexuality. We don't talk about feelings. Yeah, we don't talk about IBD. We don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about psychology. So one thing that I've had to work on for the last 10 years, this was even well before I was diagnosed with my illness, was I would go to therapy. And it was one thing that I've worked on for the last 10 years is finding the empowerment through vulnerability, and understanding that those things and the stigma and anything that was kind of suppressed that we weren't really supposed to talk about, there's a lot of power in it for me to discuss, and kind of taking away the negative shadow or like what's holding it back, and understanding that by discussing it, I'm eliminating that power that it had over me and being able to find empowerment in it. So even within my relationship, as we've talked about, communication is key. And I find that I would like to think sometimes I'm an oversharer, and I will like say exactly what's going on, what's in my mind, because if I hold it in, it can manifest itself in weird ways within my body. So it's important to get that stuff out. So same thing goes for being a person of color and kind of battling and tackling those cultural norms that were placed on me that don't necessarily fit the mold for me in my life. And so, yeah, that's where I would be.
I always say that I embarrass myself on the internet for the greater good. And I think as like influencers, we all kind of overshare maybe a little bit. That's why we are where we are. But you made a point and I lost what I was going to say. Oh, the other thing, follow influencers of color who have IBD online, right? There's so many people now who are advocates doing really amazing things. And I think especially in the last couple months, I have seen and come in contact with so many more people than I did before. And very candidly, I kind of say like, I think people are tired of hearing white ladies talk about IBD. Pretty much, right? We're pretty played out in this space. And I'm loving seeing so many other people now kind of like get some shine. So like, if you're feeling that way, go find people who look like you, who have the same beliefs as you, the same background as you, and see how they're doing it, or reach out to them. Like, the world is really small now with the internet, like make use of that. Okay, 2 questions that are kind of like related a little bit. Has IBD changed how much you want to have sex? And if so, do you ever get intimate when you don't want to because your partner wants or needs to?
I would say that, oh, sorry.
Sorry, you can go ahead, Ishmael.
All I was going to say is that I feel like I've always had like a high sex drive. And so I've never been, I wouldn't say opposed to it, but sometimes my body is like, no, fuck you, you're not doing anything. So sometimes I will push myself to do it, and then I obviously you feel good afterwards, but then you feel bad after that. But yeah, that's kind of what I would say.
So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that definitely, it does happen, but for me, and it like everyone's been saying, it's a journey, and you really need to like work through it in order to figure out what works for you. And also another big thing with people with IBD and chronic illness, touch in like medical settings may not have been a good thing. Like I have a lot of like from a recent surgery, I just can't, I need to be very aware and alerted to the fact if my husband's going to touch like my abdominal area or something like that, because I immediately like kind of freak out, and it's totally unintentional. It's just that there's been so much trauma in that area that I need to be fully mentally and emotionally aware and ready for it sometimes. So I think also that like not being in the mood for like, say, going all the way there, that prevents me from wanting to do anything a lot of the time. So I've had to change that mindset and give myself permission to be creative about what intimacy is, and that it doesn't always have to be like, you know, Justin said, going all the way. It can be anything in between, because I know that that makes my partner feel loved and taken care of as well. Because before I really vocalized and verbalized like, hey, the only reason we're not physically intimate is because I feel like shit right now, and like I have a lot of medical PTSD in my head, and you know, I feel like I'm gonna poop my pants and all this stuff. Like, it's not that I don't love you and that I don't find you sexy. It's just that I have a lot to deal with mentally and physically right now. So I think if you can talk it out and figure out paths to getting yourself like in the mood for whatever the mood is, during times where you feel like crap, because to be honest, we feel like that most of the time. That's really important to figure out kind of baby steps towards, okay, how can I get mentally in the mood a little bit more, because a lot of the times we'll like throw up in our heads like, stop, these symptoms are flaring, must be on shutdown, must be on lockdown. So I think that just open communication and working your way through it and giving your permission to be creative about what intimacy is really can help you like be with someone when you're not really in the mood or your IBD is not in the mood.
Well, and that communication too also lets your partner know like it's not them. Because I think, everybody has a tendency to internalize when they feel rejected in any way, shape, or form, that it's important to like really, if you are comfortable, which I hope you're comfortable with whoever you're going to be intimate with, sidebar, that you can tell them like, hey, this is not you, this is a me thing, and identifying the specific thing that it is. I think more information there is helpful. Like Mara was saying, like, I feel this way and that having sex will make me feel this way, and I don't want that right now. So yeah.
Well, and also like that's interesting that you bring that up, Meredith. Like, is like I can't relate like Ishmael. Like I have a high sex drive too, So and I've been with partners where it's been much more harder for them to be in the mood because maybe they've had like endometriosis and stuff like that. So I'd love to hear your perspective on this, right? So when I wanted to get intimate with her, with one of the girls in the past, her body just didn't want it. So then what we would do was we would do like, you would get naked and just do like mutual masturbation, So we'd just be cuddling each other and then she'd be getting herself off and I'd be getting myself off. And so I think for me, the thing, it's like not about intimacy. It's not about intercourse. It's about seeing my partner and seeing her like really enjoy that pleasure, and just like coming real hard. Like, so is that something that hinders you as well? Or is that would that, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. Or is it too painful to even just like stimulate yourself?
It totally depends on the day, time, what your IBD and chronic pain and other conditions are doing. So I think that's another thing you need to really key into yourself and say, is my head getting in the way or is my body getting in the way? And what can I do in this situation? But I think just complete honesty with your partner about what's going on with you internally and saying, hey, this is like what I can offer in the moment and what I'm looking for. What about you is just so important. So after the fact, there isn't any like tension or feeling of, someone got, left high and dry, or that someone, wasn't, feeling loved and respected and satisfied. So yeah, I mean, it changes all the time. That's the nature of chronic illness in our lives. We can never, and that's one of the hardest things that we can never predict. So like, I can think all day long, like, okay, I know my husband's had a rough day. I want to be able to show him how much I appreciate him, or like do something for him, even if that's just like making dinner. But I can't do that at the end of the day because I am doubled over in pain. So I just have to adapt and think, okay, what else can I do to show him that I love him? Bring him a cup of tea or something like that. That can be similar in any sort of like physical circumstances as well. You kind of just got to work with what you can work with.
Okay.
And your expectations.
I think too, the idea of like, do you have sex even if you don't want to because your partner wants to? It's okay to say yes to that. Like sometimes you do, even though you don't want to, because you love your partner and you want to take care of them. But that's if you're okay with that, I think you get to make that call, like whether or not that's okay to you. And sometimes it might be okay, and other times it might not be okay. And I think that like it goes back to what Meredith was saying, which is like, this is what I'm willing to offer right now. And maybe you're like, we can have this kind of sex, but not that kind of sex. It's all communication. And I think I just want to like, it feels wrong to say have sex even if you don't want to, but I think there are times when that's okay. But as long as you're the one driving that choice, like it's your choice to do that, and it's your choice to deal with the potential like consequences of that, versus like feeling guilted or pressured, not all those bad feelings, making sure that like you're in the driver's seat choosing your own adventure.
Exactly, because that resentment and stuff will just take over any possibility of that experience being good, because the entire time you're just thinking like, I'm not making this choice, I don't really want to do this, I feel guilted into making this choice. But when you say, okay, this is what I'm like want to do, let's do this, then afterwards you can be like, all right, yeah, that was good. That was a good experience. I will do that again.
Well, and being creative too. Like all these scenarios involve being creative in some way, shape, or form. And you might discover something that you're like, oh, that was pretty cool. I'm kind of into that you will do again in the future. So I think my body always has a tendency to like shut it down and be like, nope, nothing, done, end of story. And I find that when I like open my mind a little bit more, or like am more open to other possibilities, good things happen. And whatever level that is, like whatever level of intimacy. But it's really easy to be like, I'm in pain, I'm uncomfortable, I'm worried about all the things I'm worried about, and I just don't want to. But a pattern of that, I feel like, is what really can interrupt that intimacy, right? So it's communicating those things with your partner, being open to like maybe trying some different things, or looking at sex differently in general and what it means. To me, those are the way you navigate through chronic illness when your body is like, nope, we're not into this.
Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes left. I wanted to like open it back up to you guys. Like, is there anything we missed? You know, we didn't really talk specifically about your relationships and if this has affected you in any way, shape, or form, or the way you dated maybe before you were with your partner. You know, is there anything else that you feel like is important to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I think strategies as well is a really cool thing to talk about, what strategies we all have when it comes to intimacy, in terms of like workarounds and things like that. So for me, like one strategy I have when it comes to my ostomies, I have a belt, like a girdle that I wear. So that really helps a lot. Also, I'll put like a couple of drops of eucalyptus oil inside my bag. So if I have a date, I'm going to someone's house and I don't want to explode the bathroom, you know, but I need to, that it still smells decent, you know.
I always make sure I go to the bathroom beforehand and feel like, I mean, regardless of what I'm doing, just feel like not as bloated, feel something comfortable that makes you feel good, even if that's nothing. Yeah, just prepare yourself as much as possible. I find that if I like, you know, properly, I have a lot of chronic pain. So if I can medicate ahead of time, hydrate, feel as good as I can, then there's a lot more stuff in my head, you know, at the time. And
it's interesting.
Some really cute pictures of some cute lingerie on her Instagram.
Yeah.
Today.
Well, that's kind of funny that you mentioned that. My mother-in-law actually owns our only local adult store in my hometown. So I do get my lingerie from there, and that's a good way, you know, to hide or kind of conceal my ostomy. If, you know, maybe I don't always, but if, you know, some days maybe I feel like it, or just kind of more, it kind of keeps it secure, right, close to my body. So those are always great options too. And like Meredith said, I always go and I empty my bag before, because the last thing you want is a big explosion everywhere. And I guess even planning it a little bit ahead of time, you know, if you know, maybe after mealtime, you don't always feel so good, you kind of, you know, when will that fit in your day?
Something that my husband and I started doing, and Meredith is talking a little bit about this, is we developed like a sex ritual, which sounds much more intense than it actually is. But it's basically like, I go to the bathroom beforehand, like we separate, right? We like get ourselves ready. I do what I need to do to feel good about myself. I put on like a robe or something, whatever. But just like mentally prepping, physically prepping. And then the other part for us is, one, making sure that we have 4 animals, that there are no animals in the room with us, but like, you know, prepping your space too. And if you're nervous about like an accident, maybe it means you bring in a towel so you don't think about that. Like the ritual aspect is about getting your mental state ready if you have a hard time getting in the mood without it. So that's definitely something I think that has helped us and helped me, more importantly, that I would recommend to a lot of people is looking at it like a ritual. I just feel like ritual is such an intense word, but like it's really just like mental prep and
like a routine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, routine feels a lot better than ritual, but the book I read called it a ritual, so that's what we do. Anybody have anything else? Last call, final parting words, or like other really solid tips?
I think
One of the helpful things, sorry, that I've done recently is just to have like a body check-in before we know we're going to do anything. Be like, okay, this is off limits, this is okay, you know, or like in a positive way. Like it would feel good if you like, you know, rub my neck. Like I have had migraines like nonstop for the past week. So even just holding my neck in place feels so good. So just have like a body check-in and like an emotional check-in, and then everyone's on the same page. So you don't need to stress out about anything in the moment. Sorry, interrupted.
Oh, no worries. The one thing that I was going to add, like for like final thoughts, is that like one thing that, because a lot of people, like I post on my Instagram and I'll ask people questions to see what they say, and I ask questions about like dating often, and people will tell me that, oh, like I've stopped dating because of like my illness and I'm too scared to date. And one thing that I want to like let people know is that to find the power within that like situation, like Justin was saying, like you find that you might become like the hero in your story, or you might just finding that power within yourself, because the thing is, the more you suppress that, the bigger the obstacle becomes, and you start creating this like mountain out of molehill, and then you've kind of got to put yourself out there to kind of reap the benefits and the rewards of actually your illness, and understanding that it's not holding you back as much as your ego or your mind or your psychological aspect is. So like you have to put yourself out there to understand. And then one thing that Jackie had even said was that you're not going to die of that embarrassment. You're not going to die if anything like negative happens. And most chances are people will be very understanding to it. And Justin even touched on that. So like full circle moment, talking about everything that we've talked about, is that when we are in those dating scenarios, we are in a safe space, because usually we have vetted the person that we're out on a date with. We know who our sexual partners are going to be for the most part. So like we're well aware of the scenarios we're putting ourselves into, and we have created those atmospheres and those environments to put ourselves into. So everyone, I just want them to find that power within it.
Man, I don't even need to wrap up after that. I can just be like, yeah, what he said. Thank you guys for spending your Wednesday night, day, whatever it is, wherever you are, with me and with everybody here at the Galley Health Facebook page. Thank you to Galley Health for hosting this, as always. And I think I'm just going to toss this out there and say, like, if anybody watching this has like questions about intimacy, you can find all of us online. It's pretty easy. We're out there. So, you know, reach out to somebody who you feel comfortable with. You don't have to go through IBD ever alone, especially on a topic like this. There are people who will help you through it, walk you through it, give you tips. So with that, have a great night, everybody.
See ya. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.